Hi everyone, this is Stephanie with Little Jaeger Studios, here today to give a quick tutorial on sublimation for beginners, my top 5 tips. So the first thing that's important when starting sublimation is to understand what sublimation is. So sublimation is the process of ink dye printing with special sublimation ink on sublimation paper onto either polyester fabric garments or specially coated sublimation blanks. So it's also important to understand what sublimation can and can't do. Sublimation ink is transparent ink, so that when you're printing on something, you need to print on something. For example, if you're wanting to use a lightly colored shirt, you need to print on something that is lighter than the ink you're going to be using. Because if you think of sublimation ink like a highlighter marker, that it is not going to dye something that is dark, like a dark black fabric. Sublimation ink, if you were to print on that, would not show up because you cannot dye the ink, the fabric, darker than what it already is. So if you just think of sublimation as a transparent ink that it's going to print on something, but it's going to show the background color somewhat underneath it. That's why it's typically recommended to either print on white or very light colored garments if you're, for example, wanting to make a t-shirt. The next thing is, what can sublimation do? Is that it can do a wide array of things. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of sublimation friendly blanks. For example, this water bottle. In the crafting world, we call blanks something that you're going to use to decorate for your crafting project. So you always want to make sure that you have either high polyester fabric if you're wanting to do like t-shirts and garments, or sublimation specific blanks that are made for the process of sublimation. There's typically, you can't go to a chain store and buy a coffee mug, for example, that will accept sublimation ink, because it has to have a special sublimation coating on it for it to work. But there are coffee mugs and tumblers and air fresheners and pillowcases and a wide range of products out there that you can do and you can personalize with. The important part is that you just make sure you're buying something that's specific for sublimation. So what equipment do you need to get started with sublimation? Well, first, you'll either want a sublimation printer that will have your ink for sublimation and sublimation paper in it, or you can also do like many people do and buy a sublimation transfer that's already printed. If you don't want to start out investing in the printer, you can go on places like Etsy's, to shops like mine, and buy just the transfers if you're wanting to start out that way before you invest in a printer. But you're definitely going to want a quality heat press, such as I've got this 15-inch clamshell that I really love, that I got from Heat Press Nation. So your heat press is going to be one of your major factors in determining your quality. If you're not getting a good, even, consistent heat press, it's going to affect your results. So while you can sometimes have really good luck with inexpensive presses from like Amazon, if you're thinking you're going to get serious into sublimation, definitely invest in quality to start, because in the end it will actually save you money from upgrading to either a bigger press or a more quality press when you realize that your press maybe isn't giving you a high quality result. Some other things you'll want to have handy for sublimation work is you'll want, if you're doing, for example, garments, you'll want blowout paper. I get mine at Walmart in the shipping section. This is to cover your press and your product to make sure that you're not blowing out paper when you do, or blowing out extra ink gases when you press, so that it doesn't stain your press and then get transferred onto future projects. Also, I really enjoy, and you'll see me talking about it in some of my videos, is Condi Pro Spray. It's a sublimation tacking spray that just, you give a light coat of mist to your product, and it gives it a little sticky feeling, and it gives a really good quality contact with your blank, so that you get a good press on that item without like shifting and ghosting and some of those issues. Some people prefer to use heat tape. That's totally a personal thing. I personally use heat tape very little, mostly only for some tumblers, and then I use my Condi Pro Spray for the rest. And so those are the main items you'll want, is either your sublimation printer, your quality heat press, a way to secure the transfer to the product, and also some handy things to have are heat resistant gloves, and you know, and your protective gear that you'll also want. So that is the next thing that you'll want. And give me just a second. And so the next tip I would have for beginners is understanding what blank you're working with, and understanding the time, temperature, and pressure that blank is going to print best with. Generally speaking, sublimation is done at 400 degrees for around 60 seconds on most items. You'll find there are some things that need a little bit less or a little bit more time for. I personally do most of my pressing around 385 for 70 seconds, and that way sometimes you'll find certain poly fabrics don't do as well or scorch easily at 400, and so I take it down just a little bit and give it just a few extra seconds to get that good press, but with less risk of possibly burning the fabric. A lot of blanks, depending on what you're purchasing, will sometimes have a protective clear film on them, so you want to double check to make sure that the item that you're going to be pressing doesn't have a protective film on it, or if it does, that you've already taken it off. A lot of times sublimation blanks that either aluminum, metal, your MDF, things of that nature will have a protective coating, not a coating so much as a clear film. So you just want to double check to make sure that you take that off. I've made the mistake many times myself that I get in a hurry and aren't thinking and get excited to press a new project, only to realize I didn't take the plastic film off. So you want to make sure that you've done that. So these are just some of my basic tips for sublimation. Like with starting any new craft, research, understand what sublimation is and how you use it, and there's a wide world of fun projects out there waiting for you. Just take your time to have a full understanding of how it works and what it is, and to make sure that you're getting good quality equipment and good quality blanks that are made for sublimation, and that will help you get started on the right track. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer comments. So thank you so much for joining me, and you have a great day.